I used to think success was about luck, being in the right place, meeting the right people. But luck is just a story the world tells to comfort losers. Winners, they don't wait for luck. They build it. My name is Ethan Cole, and 5 years ago, I lost everything. It started on a gray Thursday morning, the kind that smells like burnt coffee and rain. I was 30, broke, and running on fumes, a man with big dreams and nothing to show for them. The company I helped build from scratch had just been sold. Not by me, but by my best friend Ryan. He took my ideas, my clients, and even the girl I thought I'd marry. I stood there in the boardroom, watching him shake hands with investors, smiling that fake, polished smile. He looked like a man who had it all. I looked like a ghost. That night, I drove home through empty streets, headlights cutting through drizzle. Every red light felt personal. Every song on the radio sounded like a cruel joke. When I reached my apartment, it didn't even feel like home anymore. Just walls soaked in failure. The fridge hummed louder than usual, maybe mocking me. I sat at my desk, staring at a blank page. The words wouldn't come. All I could think about was revenge, but revenge is a drug. It makes you feel alive while killing you quietly. So I did nothing. For days, weeks, months. I scrolled through Ryan's new company posts, flashy cars, champagne, motivational quotes. He looked happy. I looked like a man still bleeding. Then one night something changed. I saw an interview he gave online. He said, "Some people just don't have what it takes to win." He smirked. He was talking about me. Something in me cracked open. It wasn't rage this time. It was clarity. I whispered to myself, "All right then, let's see who really wins." That was the night I buried Ethan the failure and started building Ethan the winner. Winning doesn't start with success. It starts with humiliation, the kind that burns you alive and forces you to rebuild from ashes. I got a job at a local coffee shop. It wasn't glamorous. I made lattes for people who used to work for me. But every order, every cup was a lesson in humility. I studied people, their habits, moods, and excuses. I realized something. Most people don't want to win. They just want comfort. And comfort kills ambition. Every night after my shift, I read books about mindset, psychology, and business. I watched talks, took notes, filled journals with thoughts I didn't understand yet. But slowly, something was forming. Discipline. One night, a customer left behind a notebook. Inside it was a single line written in neat cursive, "If you want to change your life, change your habits first." That line hit me like lightning. It was so simple, so obvious, yet I'd never done it. The next morning, I started waking up at 5 a.m. No alarms, no excuses. I wrote goals on sticky notes and plastered them on my bathroom mirror. Be stronger. Be sharper. Be relentless. I stopped hanging out with people who pitied me. I deleted half my contacts. I unfollowed Ryan. I went dark. People thought I was losing it. In a way, I was losing the weak version of me. Months passed. Winter turned to spring, and I was still grinding. Still broke, but focused. Still invisible, but dangerous. Then something strange happened. The owner of the cafe, an old man named Frank, noticed. He said, "You got that fire, kid. Most people just float. You burn." He offered me a shot at managing the place. It wasn't much, but it was a start. I took it, and I treated that small coffee shop like it was Wall Street. Inventory, marketing, customer flow. I optimized everything. Sales doubled in 3 months. Frank laughed and said, "You're not a barista. You're a storm." And that's when it hit me. I didn't need to chase success. I needed to become the kind of person success chases. I started journaling more. Each page began with a question. What would a winner do today? Winners don't complain. They adapt. They don't seek approval. They earn respect. They don't wait for the right time. They create it. Every decision, every thought started to change. And people noticed. One afternoon, a woman walked in. "See, a recruiter for a tech startup. She saw how I handled the chaos of a morning rush, how I led, how I stayed calm under pressure. She handed me her card and said, "You ever think about getting back in the game?" Back then I smiled politely, but inside I was screaming. That moment was the first crack of light in the tunnel I'd been crawling through. That night, I went home and looked at myself in the mirror, not the man Ryan betrayed, not the guy who lost everything, but someone different. I said, "You're not done yet." I applied for the job, and for the first time in years, I felt alive again. But life doesn't hand you victories that easily. 2 weeks later, I got the email. "We've decided to move forward with another candidate." I stared at the screen. The words blurred. All that effort, gone. Old Ethan would have given up, but not this time. This time I smiled, because losers stop when it hurts. Winners continue. I replied to the recruiter. I thanked her, and I asked for feedback. She said, "Honestly, you were impressive. You just didn't sell your story." That hit deep, because she was right. I had a story, I just wasn't owning it. So I started writing it down, everything I'd been through, the betrayal, the breakdown, the rebuild, and that story would soon become my weapon. But I didn't know yet that the man who ruined me was about to walk back into my life. They say time heals all wounds. That's a lie. Time doesn't heal. It teaches you how to hide the pain better. Months passed since that rejection email. The world moved on, but I didn't. I wasn't chasing jobs anymore. I was chasing identity. Every morning I still woke up at 5 a.m. I still wrote, read, and planned. I didn't know where it was all leading, but I knew why. Because one day I'd meet Ryan again. And when I did, I wouldn't be the man he betrayed. I'd be the storm he never saw coming. I started freelancing, small gigs, web design, marketing, copywriting. Nothing fancy, but it built something I'd forgotten how to feel: momentum. My first client paid me $300. I stared at the money like it was gold, because it wasn't about the cash. It was proof that I still had value. Soon, I got referrals. 1 became 3, 3 became 10. By the end of the year, I was earning more than my old salary, but that wasn't what fueled me. What fueled me was obsession. Every night I'd whisper, "Don't get even, get better." And slowly I did. One evening I went out for a drink. It was rare. I didn't do distractions anymore, but a friend insisted. The bar was loud, full of fake laughter and expensive lies. Then I saw him. Ryan. He looked the same. Perfect suit, perfect smile, and the same arrogance in his eyes, and like the world still belonged to him. He didn't see me at first. He was too busy being adored. But when he did, that smile faltered for half a second. Just half a second, but I saw it. He walked over, glass in hand, pretending it was coincidence. "Ethan? Wow, been years, man." His tone dripped with pity, the kind that cuts deeper than hate. "Yeah," I said, "years." He leaned closer. "I've been meaning to reach out. I hope there's no hard feelings. Business is business, right?" I stared at him. He thought I was still that broken man, the one he could talk down to, but I just smiled and said, "Of course, no hard feelings." He nodded, relieved. Then he turned to leave. That's when I said, "By the way, congratulations on your last funding round." He froze. He hadn't mentioned it yet. He didn't know I'd been watching, studying, planning. He turned back, that fake grin twitching. "Ah, thanks. You keeping tabs on me?" I laughed softly. "No, just the industry." And I walked away. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because seeing him hurt, but because it didn't, and that scared me. I realized something powerful. I didn't hate Ryan anymore. I outgrew him. Hatred is emotional dependence. It means they still control your focus. But winners, they move beyond revenge. They use it as fuel, not a destination. So I stopped thinking about him, and I started thinking bigger. The next morning, I opened my notebook and wrote one question. What if I built something that couldn't be taken from me That question changed everything. I began working on my own brand, Portsi, a platform about mindset and growth, videos, writing, stories, real stories, the kind that hurt before they heal. At first, nobody watched, no likes, no comments, but I kept posting because consistency beats validation every time. After 3 months, one of my videos went viral, a 2-minute story called The Day I Lost Everything. It hit 1 million views, then 2, then 5. People wrote to me, "Man, this story saved me. I thought I was alone. You said what I couldn't say." For the first time, I realized I didn't want revenge anymore. I wanted impact. Weeks later, I got an email from a conference organizer. They wanted me to speak at a business event, share my story about rebuilding after loss. I laughed out loud. Me? The guy who used to clean coffee machines at 6 a.m. But I said yes. The day of the talk, I stood backstage, palms sweating. Hundreds of people waited, and then I saw him again. Ryan, front row. He was one of the sponsors. My chest tightened. The universe has a dark sense of humor. When they called my name, I walked onto that stage like a man walking into a storm. The lights blinded me for a moment. Then everything went silent. I began, 5 years ago I thought winning meant destroying your enemies, but real winners, they destroy their limits. People leaned in. I told them my story, stripped of names, but full of truth. How betrayal turned to clarity, how losing everything became my greatest gift, how pain is just a teacher in disguise. Halfway through, I saw Ryan shift in his seat, his jaw clenched, his eyes, cold, calculating, realize something. He couldn't own this. He couldn't steal this, because this was mine. When the talk ended, the crowd rose to their feet. It was the first standing ovation of my life. After the event, Ryan approached me. No arrogance this time, just silence. He said, "You've changed." I smiled. "No, I just stopped pretending." He nodded slowly. "Maybe we should talk. I've got ideas, partnerships." I cut him off gently. "I don't do partnerships with ghosts." He blinked. Then he understood. That conversation wasn't about revenge. It was closure. The kind that doesn't need fireworks, just truth. That night I walked home under city lights, hands in my pockets. The air felt cleaner. My chest felt lighter. Winning, I realized, isn't about trophies or followers. It's about freedom. Freedom from the past, from fear, from needing to prove anything to anyone. And that's when I truly began to live. Because once you think like a winner, the world can't take that away. But what I didn't know yet was that the universe wasn't done testing me. My greatest challenge was still waiting, and it would come not from an enemy, but from someone I'd learned to love. Success looks quiet from the outside. People see the highlights and think peace follows. But the higher you climb, the more the wind howls. It tries to push you back. It asks if you really belong up here. I woke before the sun and listened to the city breathe. The world was still, like a held note. I made coffee, black. I opened my notebook. 3 words on the first page. Think like winner. No A. No room for doubt. My videos kept growing. Brands called, podcasts, panels, requests for me to mentor sons and fathers and strangers who felt like both. I said no more than yes. Not because I was too good, because I was finally guarding my life. That's when I met her. Maya walked into the same cafe where I used to clean the grinder at 6 a.m. She ordered a plain drip coffee and a side of quiet. Brown jacket, messy bun, eyes that didn't just look at you, and they scanned for the truth. I was at the corner table writing. She recognized me from a video but didn't act like it. "Your story," she said, "felt like my brother's. He didn't make it through his storm." I closed my notebook. I let silence carry the weight. "I'm sorry," I said. She nodded once. "Don't be. I'm glad someone did." We talked like people on a night train. No small talk, just mile markers. She was a nurse, worked nights, slept in fragments, said the hardest part wasn't death. It was the soft, ordinary suffering, the kind without headlines. We started meeting at odd hours, sometimes after her shift, when the sky was pale and tired, sometimes before my recordings when my mind was clear. Maya asked questions like a locksmith. She didn't try to fix me. She opened doors I had bricked over. One evening we walked by the river. The wind had teeth. She tucked her hands in her pockets and said, "Winning, what does it cost?" "Everything weak," I said. "Everything that keeps you safe. And what if you lose yourself too?" "I don't plan to." Neither did my brother. Her words followed me home. They folded into my chest like a letter I wasn't ready to read. I wrote until midnight. I wrote about pressure, about the siren song of almost, about the danger of applause, how it can drown out our own voice if we lean in too close. I hit upload. Then I stared at the ceiling and listened to my heart argue with my ego. A week later, the offer came. A big investor, a known name. He wanted to help me scale my message. He called it fuel. I heard leash. We met in a glass office that smelled like power and lemon cleaner. He smiled with perfect teeth and spoke in numbers. "If you partner with us, we'll own distribution, ad deals, and strategic brand voice. You'll focus on the art. We'll handle the business." I watched his lips shape my future. Then I heard it. That old voice, the one from the boardroom where Ryan sold my life out from under me. My palms warmed, not fear, memory. "What about content rights?" I asked. "Joint ownership," he said too fast. "And the story?" He blinked. "The story. My story, my name. What people trust me for. We'll optimize it." There it was. The word that always sounds like progress until you wake up and realize you're a product. "I'll think about it," I said. I already knew the answer, but winners don't react. They review. That night, Maya and I sat on her fire escape and shared takeout like college kids. I told her about the offer. Her face didn't change. She held a plastic fork like a scalpel. "If you sign," she said, will it make your voice louder or smaller?" "Louder," I said, "for them. For you?" I stared at the city. The windows looked like small truths. For me, smaller. "Then you already know." I turned it down. My inbox exploded with new offers, smaller dollars, cleaner terms. I declined those too. I wasn't chasing more. I was protecting enough. My audience grew anyway, not because I was clever, because I was honest. Honesty has a sound. People can hear it even through a screen. Then the storm came. Not headlines, not public drama, private pressure, the kind that tries to bend you from the inside. A teenager DM'd me at 3:12 a.m. He said he was done. No one would miss him. He had my video queued up like a goodbye note. "Tell me why I shouldn't," he wrote. I sat up in the dark. My throat went dry. I crafted a voice message with hands that didn't feel like mine. I told him what I wish someone had told me when the world felt empty. That pain lies. That tomorrow can't help you if you don't give it a chance, that he didn't need to win tonight. He just needed to stay. We talked till the sun turned the room gray. He promised to tell his mom. He promised to reach out to a counselor at school. He promised to breathe 1 minute at a time. When I hung up, I walked to the sink and ran cold water over my wrists. My own reflection looked older. Winning had found its price. Influence isn't a crown. It's a fire alarm. You don't get to sleep through it. I told Maya. She listened without blinking. She didn't say, "You're strong." She said, "This is heavy. I'm proud of how you carried it." That difference mattered. More messages came. People on the edge, people in the middle, people who looked fine but felt like empty houses. I answered what I could. I set boundaries I could live with. I built a resource page, hotlines, free clinics, church groups that acted like family whether or not you believed. I learned to say, "I'm not a therapist," and still be human. Meanwhile, the old world found me again. Ryan called. I let it go to voicemail. He texted, Need to talk. Urgent. I stared at the screen until my coffee went cold. Urgent to him, maybe. To me, nothing was on fire. He sent an email. Polite. Careful. He wanted to buy ad space on my channel, his new product line, a mindset system. I laughed. Not mean, just tired. The boy who once stole my voice now wanted to rent it. I didn't reply. Not yet. Not from spite. From strategy. I needed to know my reasons. Revenge is a lazy reason. Clarity is a clean one. 2 days later, Maya and I went to her brother's old neighborhood. She does it every year on his birthday, leaves a note at the park, a small ritual, a way to talk to someone you can't call. We sat on the swings like kids hiding from the world. She said, "I don't want you to become the men you speak against." I waited. She held my hand like a vow. "I don't want your mission to replace your life." "I need both," I said. "Then build both." So I did. I hired help. A producer who respected silence as much as sound, an assistant who protected my calendar like a guard dog, a lawyer who hated pretty contracts. We built systems that could hold weight without crushing the people inside. When I finally answered Ryan, I met him in a public place with bright lights and a short menu. He wore a new watch and old habits. He pitched hard and smiled harder. I asked 3 questions. Who owns the data? Who sets the message? Who gets to say no last? He danced around the answers like a politician at a church picnic. I pushed my plate away. "No," I said. "No? I can't sell seats on my lifeboat." His jaw twitched. "This could make you 10 times bigger, or 10 times hollower." He called me arrogant. I called for the check. That night I felt something close to grief. Not for him, for the version of me that still wanted him to understand. Winners mourn their old needs quietly. Then they let them go. My next video was different, not louder, truer. I told the story of almost selling out twice, once in a boardroom with old friends, once in a glass office with a man who thought he could buy my echo. I didn't name names. I named the trap. People saw themselves in it. The comments were a chorus. We are tired of easy money that empties the soul. 2 weeks later, a hospital called. A social worker had seen my video. A teen wanted to meet the guy who kept me here. I drove across town and sat in a room with buzzing lights and a view of a parking lot. He was smaller than I imagined. A hoodie swallowed him, like he was hiding from his bones. He didn't say much. He didn't have to. Presence speaks. When I got home, there was a note taped to my door. Maya's handwriting. 4 words. "Proud of your no." I put the note inside my notebook. I ran my fingers over the paper until the ink felt like braille. Sometimes love is that simple. Sometimes victory is that quiet. But the wind was still rising. More eyes meant more weight. More weight meant more ways to break. A journalist emailed me he was running a feature, From Failure to Fame, the new gospel of winners. He wanted details, numbers, names. He said he'd get them either way. I tasted metal, not fear, focus. I met him during daylight with a clear answer. "I'll talk about ideas," I said. "I won't feed your bloodlust." He laughed like I was naive. "Your audience loves pain." "My audience loves truth," I said. "Pain is just evidence?" He folded his notebook. "Then give me a quote." "My victory isn't your villain." He printed the piece anyway. It was kinder than I expected. Maybe he heard me. Maybe he didn't. Either way, I slept. Maya and I marked time in small ways. Grocery runs at weird hours. Notes on napkins. Kisses that said, "Keep going," more than "Come here." I started to imagine a future that wasn't just me versus the world, me and someone with the world. Then life cracked. Not a break, a hairline fracture. So thin you miss it until the whole thing gives. Maya's mother fell. A simple fall. A cruel one. Surgery, complications, bills stacked like bad news. Maya went from steady to stretched. Night shifts. Hospital visits. Fear that wore her like a second skin. I told her I'd cover the bills. She said no. Pride can look like strength. It can also look like a wall. We argued in whispers that felt louder than yelling. She didn't want to be my story. I didn't want to be her savior. We stood in the doorway like two people trying to leave and stay at the same time. That week I recorded a video and hated every second of it. I sounded wise and felt hollow. I scrapped it. I took a walk in the rain and let the sky wash me clean. When I came back, I turned the camera on and told the truth. I said, thinking like a winner isn't thinking you never need help. It's knowing which help keeps you human. I told them I was learning to love without keeping score. I told them saying no to deals is easy compared to saying yes to someone's pain. The upload button felt like a confession. Maya watched it at the hospital sitting in a plastic chair that squeaked whenever she moved. She texted me one line, "Thank you for seeing me." I drove over with soup and silence. We ate in the hallway. We didn't fix anything. We didn't need to. Sometimes the win is just staying. When her mother came home, the apartment turned into a recovery ward. Pills in a labeled box, timers, therapy bands. I learned the language of small victories, 2 steps farther, 5 minutes. Longer, 1 pain level lower. Progress felt like a whisper you had to lean in to hear. My schedule bent. Some gigs went away. Some fans were loud about it. Don't lose your edge, bro. Don't go soft. As if love were a weakness, as if patience were a flaw. I looked at the first page of my notebook again, think like winner. It didn't say think like a star. It didn't say think like a machine. Winners protect what matters, even when it costs them applause. One night, as I tucked a blanket around Maya's mom, she grabbed my wrist with surprising strength. Her eyes were glassy but clear. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For staying. Men leave when the lights dim." I swallowed hard. "I used to." "Don't." I sat on the floor beside the couch and let those words wrap around me like a second skin. That was the moment I understood the next mountain. It wasn't fame. It wasn't money. It wasn't even forgiveness. It was building a life sturdy enough to hold love and purpose at the same time. The wind still howled. But I wasn't bracing anymore. I was learning to lean into it like a runner in the last mile, not because the finish line was near, because I finally believed I belonged on the track. The next morning I wrote new words on a blank page. 4 this time. Think like a builder, not of empires, of homes, of hearts, of habits that won't collapse when the world shakes. And the world was about to shake, not from an enemy, not from a headline, from a choice that would test every boundary I had drawn, a choice between guarding my voice and saving someone else's. I closed the notebook. I breathed in, I breathed out, I stood up, ready to pay the price of my own advice. There's a moment right before dawn when everything feels suspended. The streetlights hum, the world holds its breath, and time seems to wait for your next move. That's how life felt in those weeks, balanced, fragile, like a glass spinning on the tip of a knife. Maya's mother was healing. My channel was growing again. The storm was quiet, but quiet doesn't always mean peace. Sometimes it's the silence before something breaks. It started with an email. Subject line, a cry for help. The sender's name was hidden. The message said, "Your words kept me here once, but they're not working anymore." Attached was a voice note. I clicked play, a shaky breath, then a whisper. "I just need someone to understand." My heart sank. It wasn't the first desperate message I'd seen, but this one sounded familiar. The voice, young, trembling, broken, belonged to the same teenager I'd spoken to months ago. The one who promised to fight another day, the one who called me his hero. I dialed his number. No answer. I sent an email. No reply. The next morning I called his school counselor. She said he hadn't shown up all week. My throat closed. I told her I'd find him, but I didn't know how. I drove for hours, retracing the little I knew. The city from his profile photo, The corner store from his story, the park with the broken swing. Each place felt like a ghost town. Every streetlight flickered like a heartbeat fading out. Finally, I found his name on a missing persons board at the local precinct. He'd been gone 3 days. The officer recognized me. "You that YouTube guy, right? The think like a winner dude?" I nodded. "Yeah, he talked about you." My chest tightened. "Talked?" he sighed, before he left. They found his phone later that night at a bus station. No wallet, no note, just his phone, with one last message drafted but unsent. It said, "Tell Ethan I tried. Grief is a quiet thief. It doesn't scream. It just sits beside you and rearranges your soul until nothing fits." For days I couldn't speak, couldn't film, couldn't even think. Maya stayed. She made tea I didn't drink. She sat next to me without trying to fix it. That was her gift. Finally, one morning she said, "You can't save everyone." "I know," I whispered, "but I thought maybe I could save one." She placed her hand on mine. "You did. You just don't get to choose who." Weeks blurred. Messages piled up. Fans asked where I was. Sponsors threatened to pull out. Even Ryan's name showed up again, this time offering support. I ignored them all. Then one night, Maya found me sitting on the floor surrounded by letters from people who'd said my videos saved their lives. She knelt beside me, eyes full of worry. "You can't carry this alone." I looked up at her. "Then help me." Her brows furrowed. "Let's build something real," I said. "A space, a place where people can talk before it's too late." That was the moment the Phoenix Project was born. We rented a small office downtown, peeling paint, flickering lights, but energy that hummed with purpose. We called it a community lab. No cameras, no ads, just real people, real pain, real healing. We brought in volunteers, therapists, life coaches, even ex-addicts who'd walked through fire and come out breathing. We didn't promise salvation. We promised understanding. The first week, 2 people showed up. The second week, 10. By month's end, the room was full. One woman said, "I used to think strength meant silence." Another man whispered, "I just needed a place where I wasn't broken for feeling broken." Every story was a mirror, and each mirror reflected a piece of who I used to be. But not everyone liked it. Some fans said I'd gone soft. Some called it charity porn. The internet loves you until you stop entertaining it. Then came the headline: "Influencer builds mental health church. Dangerous or divine?" Ryan's company had funded the article. He wasn't done with me yet. He turned my compassion into a weapon, accused me of exploiting trauma for views, said the Phoenix Project was a PR stunt. For a moment, I almost broke, not from guilt, from exhaustion. How do you fight lies when they wear suits and smile for cameras? Maya said, "You can't argue with mud, you just stop stepping in it." So I went silent. No statement, no drama, just work. And slowly, truth started doing what truth always does. It survived. People visited. Journalists saw the real faces. The volunteers spoke. Lives changed. 1 year later, the Phoenix Project had chapters in 5 cities. We didn't advertise. We grew like wildfire, quiet, unstoppable, and alive. But every rise has a cost. And mine came the night I found Maya on the floor. She'd fainted. The hospital said stress, exhaustion, and something deeper, a hidden illness she'd ignored for months. She smiled weakly from the bed. "Guess I'm not invincible after all." My throat closed. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you needed to keep winning," she said softly. Her words cut like glass. "Winning means nothing if you're not in it," I whispered. The next morning I canceled every speaking event. I shut off my phone. For once, the world could wait. I spent weeks beside her, reading, laughing, crying, holding. And in those moments, I realized something that no trophy or view count had ever taught me. Love isn't a distraction from purpose. It is the purpose. When Maya recovered, we went back to the river, the same spot where she first asked, "What does winning cost?" The air was warm this time, no wind, just quiet waves touching the shore. "I think I know the answer now," I said. She smiled. "Yeah?" "It costs everything fake, every mask, every lie you tell yourself to feel safe." She nodded. "Then you're rich." We laughed. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was chasing anything. I'd arrived. Months later, Ryan sold his company again. This time, the buyers sued him for fraud. His empire crumbled, the same way mine once had. He reached out to me again, apologized, said he'd lost everyone. I invited him to the Phoenix Project. He came, sat in the back, silent. When it was his turn to speak, he said 3 words. "I was wrong." Nobody clapped, nobody judged. We just listened, because that's what we do. Afterward, he walked up to me. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said. "Then don't ask for it," I replied. "Just be better." He nodded. For the first time, I believed he might actually try. Years passed. The channel became more than stories, it became movements. People built their own versions of the Phoenix Project in their cities, their homes, their hearts. And I finally understood what think like a winner really meant. It wasn't about beating anyone. It wasn't about proving anything. It was about becoming someone. Whole, honest, and free. Because the real victory isn't in what you gain. It's in what you refuse to lose. Your soul, your love, your truth. And that's how I learned you don't need to win the world. You just need to win yourself. The funny thing about peace is that it doesn't make noise when it arrives. It just replaces the chaos one piece at a time. You look around one morning and realize you're not fighting anymore. You're living. Years had passed since the night Ryan walked into the Phoenix Project. The movement had outgrown me. There were centers in 12 states now. People I'd never met were carrying the message into prisons, classrooms, and community halls. The brand didn't belong to me anymore, and that felt right. Maya and I moved into a small house outside the city. Nothing fancy, just a porch, a dog that didn't listen, and a view of the trees instead of skyscrapers. I still wrote every morning. The notebook changed covers but never purpose. The first line never changed. Think like a winner. One spring afternoon, I was invited to give a keynote at a university. They wanted me to talk about leadership. I almost said no. Leadership had become a buzzword, a suit word. But the organizer's email ended with, "Our students feel lost. We want them to hear something real." So I went. The auditorium smelled like new carpet and nervous ambition. Hundreds of faces waited for some magic formula. I told them there isn't one. I told them the world sells shortcuts because truth takes too long. I told them leadership isn't about commanding people. It's about commanding yourself when no one's watching. Silence. Then slow applause. Then a standing ovation that didn't feel like praise. It felt like understanding. Afterward, a student approached me. She had tears in her eyes and calluses on her hands. "Your video saved me," she said. I'd heard those words before, but this time they landed differently. Maybe because I finally believed them. She asked, how do you stay strong when the noise gets too loud?" I smiled. "I don't. I step outside the room." She laughed, not knowing it was the most honest thing I could have said. That night back home, Maya was on the porch reading. She looked up. "How was it?" "Good," I said. "Still humble, huh?" "Trying to be." She smiled. Ethan Cole, the man who thought revenge was purpose, now teaching peace to 20-year-olds. "Ironic, isn't it?" "No," she said softly. "Beautiful." We sat in silence while the dogs snored between us. The air smelled like rain and second chances. Then came the phone call. It was Frank, the old coffee shop owner. His voice was weaker than I remembered. "Kid," he said, "I'm closing the place." "After all these years?" "Yeah. Doctor says it's time to rest." I wanted you to have the old register. You started your comeback behind it. I drove there the next morning. The shop looked smaller, or maybe I'd just outgrown its walls. Frank hugged me, his eyes watery but proud. You did it, he said. No, I told him. We did. You gave me a place to start again. He handed me the register, rusted, heavy, full of memories. Keep it, he said, to remind you where grit lives. On the drive home, I realized every chapter of my life had been built on someone's kindness. Even the betrayals had been teachers. Maybe that's the final lesson. No one wins alone. A year later, Maya got pregnant. We hadn't planned it. We weren't ready. But when life gives you legacy, it rarely asks permission. I remember hearing the heartbeat for the first time. Tiny, fierce, wild, like a drum calling me home. In that moment, everything changed again. I started thinking about the future differently, not as expansion, as inheritance. What stories would my child grow up hearing? Would they know the man I used to be? Angry, obsessed, lost? Or the one sitting in that room holding Maya's hand, finally understanding that strength isn't noise, but presence? Maya's pregnancy wasn't easy. Complications, hospital stays, nights of fear disguised as faith. Through it all, she stayed calm. I fell apart quietly in parking lots. Then one morning, a nurse placed a tiny life in my arms, a girl, eyes like dawn after a long winter. We named her Hope, because that's what she was, proof that even broken men can build something beautiful. Fatherhood humbled me more than failure ever did. The sleepless nights, the helpless crying, the terrifying love that makes every heartbeat a prayer. Suddenly, success felt small compared to the way her tiny fingers wrapped around mine. I filmed less, wrote more, letters to hope, lessons for later, about truth, about grit, about how winning doesn't always look like victory. Sometimes it's just staying when leaving would be easier. One evening, I got a call from the producer of a major documentary studio. They wanted to make a film about my life, the rise, the fall, the rebuild, big budget, global reach. Ryan was even listed as a potential consultant. I laughed. The irony was delicious. But I paused before saying yes. Maya watched me across the dinner table. What's wrong? I'm not sure I want to tell that story again, I said. She tilted her head. Then tell a new one. That night, I wrote down the conditions. No glamorizing pain, no villains, no victims, only lessons. If they agreed, I'd do it. They did. The documentary premiered a year later. Think Like a Winner. The Ethan Cole story. I watched it with Maya and Hope on the couch the same way we'd watch cartoons someday. When the credits rolled, I didn't feel pride. I felt gratitude for every scar that led here, for every no that protected the yes that mattered. Messages flooded in again. People wanted to know what came next. I smiled. Maybe that was the secret. There is no next. There's only now and how you hold it. But fate always saves one last test. Mine came as a diagnosis, routine checkup, a few off numbers, then words that rearranged the world, early stage lymphoma. The doctor said it was treatable, caught early. Good odds, but all I heard was the echo of the boy who once thought winning meant never falling again. I walked outside the hospital and watched the sun drop behind glass towers. The world looked the same, but I was different. Not scared, just awake. That night I told Maya. She didn't cry. She just held my face and said, "We'll fight like winners." Hope babbled between us, oblivious and perfect. I realized I'd spent years teaching people how to rise. Now I had to live it again for Pawoinia for real. Treatment was brutal. Nausea, weakness, hair in the sink. But every day I wrote one sentence. Still here. Some days that was enough. Fans sent letters, old friends showed up. Even Ryan visited. He brought flowers and silence. Need anything? He asked. Just honesty, I said. He nodded. And for the first time, we didn't talk about the past. We just existed in the same room, two survivors of our own mistakes. 6 months later, the scans came back clear. Remission. A word that tastes like sunrise. When I rang the hospital bell, Hope clapped like it was fireworks. Maya cried. I laughed until it hurt. On the drive home, I whispered a prayer to the rearview mirror. For every soul still fighting, keep thinking like a winner. That night, I recorded one final video. Not a goodbye, a beginning. I told them, winning isn't about how far you run. It's about how deeply you love while you run. The goal was never to be untouchable. It was to be real. I turned off the camera, closed the laptop, and stepped onto the porch. The world was quiet again. The kind of quiet that comes after a storm has finally made peace with the sea. The first thing you notice after surviving something that was meant to break you is how loud the small things sound. A kettle whistle, your daughter's laughter, the creak of floorboards that used to annoy you. They all sound like music now. 6 months after remission, the world felt new again. Not brighter, just truer. Every smell, every sound, every sunrise carried weight. Mortality had stripped away everything unnecessary. What was left was life, raw and real. Hope was 5 now. Old enough to ask questions that split me open. Daddy, why don't you have hair in those pictures? Because I was getting better, I said. From what? From forgetting how strong I was. She smiled like that made sense. Maybe it did. She followed me everywhere, my shadow with pigtails. When I wrote, she drew beside me. When I spoke at small events, she sat in the front row and waved like I was the only man on earth. And in a way, I was, at least in her eyes. The Phoenix Project kept growing, but I stopped trying to control it. It had a life of its own. New leaders, new faces, new ideas. It was bigger than my name now. That was the plan all along, to build something that didn't need me to survive. I became the quiet one in the back of the room, watching others share their stories, watching people rise, every voice that shook, every tear that fell. That was the real legacy, not the speeches, not the views, the ripple effect of courage. One evening I stood outside the old cafe where it all began. It was boarded up now. A for lease sign hung crooked in the window. I pressed my hand against the glass, cold and dusty. In the reflection I saw 2 versions of myself. The boy who brewed coffee for tips, and the man who finally understood why. That place wasn't where I lost. It was where I learned how to start again. I whispered, "Thank you," and walked away. At home, Maya was painting with Hope. She looked up, brush between her fingers. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said, just remembering. She smiled. "That's good. Just don't stay there too long." She was right. Winners visit their past. They don't live in it. Later that night, I sat on the porch with my old notebook. Edges frayed, pages wrinkled from years of coffee and tears. Inside were every word I'd ever written to survive myself. Goals, confessions, regrets, gratitude. It was more than a book now. It was a map. Hope toddled out, dragging her blanket. "Can you read me a story, Daddy?" I smiled. "Sure. Which one?" She pointed at the notebook. "This one." So I did. I read her the first line I ever wrote after losing everything. "What would a winner do today?" She listened, wide-eyed, the way only children do when they believe the world still makes sense. When I finished, she asked, "Did you win?" I thought for a moment. "I think so," I said. "How do you know?" "Because I didn't quit." She nodded solemnly, like it was the most important rule in the world. Years passed. Gray crept into my beard. But peace settled in my bones. Hope grew into her name, fearless, curious, alive. Sometimes she'd find old videos of me online and laugh. "Daddy, why do you sound so serious?" "Because I was learning." "Learning? What?" "How to listen to life before it stops talking." She'd roll her eyes. "You're weird." And I'd smile. I know. One autumn morning, I got an invitation from the same university that once hosted my first keynote. They wanted me to deliver the commencement speech. I hesitated. Public stages felt like ghosts from another lifetime. But Maya said, "Maybe it's time to tell the whole story one last time." So I agreed. The day of the ceremony, the air was sharp with promise. Thousands of students in black robes, the hum of possibility everywhere. When they called my name, I walked to the podium slowly. No notes, just truth. I used to think winning meant proving people wrong, I began. But the older I get, the more I realize it means proving yourself right. I told them about failure, betrayal, loss, love, about Ryan, about the cafe, about the nights that almost ended me. I told them the secret no one teaches. There's no finish line. There's only the next choice. You win by choosing to keep showing up. It's even when you're scared, even when you're tired, even when it hurts. When I finished, the field went quiet. Then a single clap, then hundreds, then thousands. Not loud, grateful. As I stepped down, a man in his 40s approached, tears in his eyes. It was Ryan. He'd aged too, softer now, humbled. He extended his hand. "I'm proud of you, Ethan." I took it. "No," I said, "I'm proud of us. We finally learned." He smiled. "I think we did." That handshake wasn't revenge. It was release. After the ceremony, Hope ran into my arms. "You did it, Daddy?" "No," I whispered, holding her close. "We did." That night, Maya lit candles on the porch. We watched the stars blink into being one by one. I felt like the universe was breathing with us. Maya leaned her head on my shoulder. "Do you ever miss the chase?" "Sometimes," I said, "but I love the peace more." She smiled. "That's how I know you really won." A few months later, I started writing again. Not for the internet, not for fame, just for hope. A book of letters. Each one beginning with the same phrase. Dear Winner, I told her everything I'd learned, that failure is fertilizer, that love is armor, that forgiveness is freedom, that the world will try to convince her that noise equals importance, but silence is where the truth hides, that the only real revenge is building a life so full that no betrayal can fit inside it. Years later, after I was gone, Maya found the notebook and the letters together in my desk. She gave them to Hope on her graduation day. By then, the Phoenix Project had spread to 50 cities. There was even a scholarship in my name for students who refused to quit. Hope stood at the podium, holding that old notebook. She read from the first page. "Think like a winner." Then she smiled. The same soft, brave smile her mother wore that night by the river. She looked up at the crowd and said, "My father taught me that winning isn't about climbing higher. It's about lifting others while you climb. It's about keeping your soul intact in a world that profits from breaking it. So today, I'm not here to tell you to win. I'm here to tell you to stay human while you do." The audience rose. Applause thundered through the hall. And somewhere, in whatever quiet corner eternity keeps for men who tried, I swear I could hear the sound of coffee brewing, the hum of the fridge, the heartbeat of a second chance.